Welcome back to the Money Makin Mamas Show.
I'm Kelcie Leica.
And my name is Nancy Wallace Laabs. And I can't stop talking because we're talking about
We've done this like 5 times.
So we're leaving it in.
You know what? We're just going to test to see if this one automatically gets more views. This will be a test.
Okay, it's a test. It's an A/B test. All right. So today we're talking about the one, and the reason we're cracking up is because
we've done this intro at least 5 times now.
I'm trying to remember this movie, and I keep tripping over. But I don't remember the name of the movie, but it had Billy Crystal and Jack Palance. It was Billy Crystal and his friend. They go to a ranch, and Jack Palance is the cowboy wrangler or something. And he's very, rough and tough. And and so he's always talking about in life, there's always the one. So Billy Crystal through the entire movie is trying to figure out what the one is. Yeah. You have to watch the movie to find out.
Okay.
Anyway, so I thought it was funny, and I don't know why it was just cracking me up because I couldn't, figure it out. So anyway,
all that.
So today we're talking about taking steps to do something new, something out of your comfort zone.
To build confidence.
And we're going to tie it all back to buying your first rental property. Mm-hmm. So Kelcie, give us a little, since I've just been cracking up for the first 2-3 minutes of the podcast. What was something new for you, that one thing that you might have done?
Well, we talked about last week, I talked about my daughter ice skating and just how that was a 2-minute thing and then done. But my son, I was actually so proud of him last night because this will be our 3rd time doing skating. And the first time was an absolute, I think it was just the wrong, everything. It was a parent-child led class. I think that me and Zach being there on the ice with him was just it didn't help his confidence. And so then the second time he did it so then I'm just going to kind of wash that one. Not that it didn't matter, but it just wasn't the same. So then the first session that he did, they use buckets. It's just him out on the ice with the coaches, and they evaluate him at the end. And he did good. He did really good throughout it. But then the last one, he just kind of had an off day. He wanted to use the buckets. And so he didn't get progressed to the next session, the session 2. So he has to repeat session 1. Well, last night was his first one after that. And his confidence after doing that first session. And now, he got rid of the bucket within 5 minutes. For 25 minutes, he was just back and forth, and his just confidence after doing that first one, that first session, just skyrocketed. And so I was really proud of him because that was just okay, you know what? You did it. You got out there. You knocked out that first one, and now look at your confidence. And for me personally, then I was reflecting myself, and, summer's coming up, and me and my husband are both into fitness, and, we both have fitness goals. And so he was like, well, Kelcie, do you want to do a cut with me? And for those of that don't know, a cut is just basically cutting back on carbs and sugar and alcohol and all that just to lose some weight. And at first I was like, absolutely not. I don't want to do that. That sounds awful. I don't like dieting. I don't like having to be, all that stuff. But then I said yes. And honestly, the hardest part was just getting through that first day. And then after that, it was my confidence again was just I'm confident in the things I'm eating, the decisions I'm making. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling better. And it wasn't even about the second, third, or fourth. It was all about that first one, that first day, just getting that under my belt. And so it's just, yes, you can stick to something 1, 2, 3, 4 times, but the confidence behind it and just feeling better about yourself and feeling like you're doing something right.
That's right. And so that's why we wanted to kind of tie it to the buying your first rental property, because there's a shift that happens when you buy your first rental property. You're going to have the fear. That's very normal. I remember, buying my first rental property, and I was getting ready to throw up and had butterflies in my stomach. And I don't know if that ever really goes away all the way, but that first one, then I'm now looking at it as it changes your perspective.
Yeah.
Now you have, maybe some additional income, tax benefits, and you look at it from someone who wanted to do it to now someone who is doing it.
Yeah.
And that just, I think when I see that in our students that do that, it just, I don't know, you can almost see the veil being lifted from their eyes once they do it. It takes a little while to get there, right?
Yeah.
Because as we've talked in other podcasts, they're ready. They've got everything ready. It's just pulling the trigger. And you see this confidence And, when they're working with someone, it gives them even more confidence to know that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think same exact thing, because I think my first my first property is a little bit more fresher than yours. And I remember it was all four of us. It was me, Zach, you, and Pops. And literally, I remember sitting there, everybody was so confident. And I was the one that was I could feel that anxiousness. I wanted to cry, because it was oh, we had to do this and that. And we had to get the foundation fixed and all these big things in my mind that actually were not yes, when you talk about foundation, that's a huge thing. I mean, that's literally the thing the house is sitting on. But when you talk about knowing the right people, the process, that, and me understanding that part, that made me feel a little bit better. But I remember having that anxious feeling, and we pulled the trigger. And then now, we got the foundation done. We redid the carpet, and we were able to flip it and sell it. It's that just, yeah, I mean, it literally pays off.
But yeah, so I think everybody has that. And it's just so what would you say the mind shift is when people, so you had that, you had that, all that angst and, fear and the unknown. And so, but once you went through the process, what did that do to you mentally?
I mean, again, I feel like I'm a broken record, but it just, built that confidence, and just, it made me feel like I could do it, that I don't know, I feel like it made me just feel better in general. I mean, just doing a cut, it makes me feel better, because now all of a sudden, okay, I've got a little bit more income. And then when I made that next step, it was just I had a little bit more income.
Yes. And knowledge, because when you did your next one, then you already knew how to look for, okay, is there foundation? Is there, so I think not only does it give you a better perspective, but it lets you move into that. You feel more confident about the knowledge that you've been researching, and all of that.
And I would say that the first one creates momentum.
Yes.
And you're okay, once we got that foundation fixed, and I know this guy now that can help out, and I really liked him, and he did a good job. Oh, I can use it for the next one. And it also, just the first one creates the framework. And, not only are you, you talked about knowledge, but okay, you deal with maybe a plumbing issue. Well, now you know how to deal with that for future. You know what I mean? And so I think it creates the momentum, it creates the knowledge, it creates the framework.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because, what we talk about is the framework that fits people's lifestyle. So there's all kinds of ways to invest in real estate, but what we focus on is the single family, right? It's a path that we like. It's steady. It's, usually there's multiple ways to not get into a single family, but to utilize the actual property, whether that's, a long-term rental, a short-term rental. We've talked about this in the past, that we have, flip, but we don't really do that anymore, because we like the appreciating asset, meaning that we use our heat maps that we talked about last episode, and to find properties that are in an area that people want to live in, that they want to stay in, and things like that. So, but I agree with you. It builds on momentum so that they're ready for maybe the next step, which, could be buying another property, could be learning about property management. You know what I mean? So it opens up so many other opportunities to make money, not just in just buying the property.
Yeah. And I think another one too that it creates, so we've talked about, it creates momentum, it creates knowledge, it creates a framework, and it also creates a new perspective. So not only are you going from opportunity, but you're going to owner. And now that first rental is not someone else is doing it, I'm doing it. And it's not looking at Susan and Joe and looking at oh, they just got an extra $2,000 a month in their savings account. I'm getting an extra $2,000 in my savings account. So it's changing the perspective as well. That first property is really changing. So, momentum, knowledge, framework, and perspective.
Yeah. And I think, do you think when people take the step and they buy their first property, does it lessen the fear a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
And I think too, it lessens the fear of risk, because now you've done it and you're like, okay, I can do this, like you're saying. So I like that it lets people kind of be more free, and then they're more apt to want to continue to build on that. And like we've talked in other episodes, you don't need, 50 properties to, and most owners have okay.
Oh, wait, before we move on, do we need to kind of...
Yeah, because I'm kind of running out.
I am too.
What's on the other?
You don't need 10 to feel the shift. One change how you think about the entire pack, tie back to single family.
Okay, how about we do this? I'll start with the most. You don't need 50 properties, and then why don't I just talk about how we built on getting up to 10 properties?
Yeah, maybe we should do a little reflection point of like, my husband and I.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So start at the 50 properties. You don't need 50 properties.
Most people don't need 50 properties to build. Really, was it because I moved my hands? Little eye.
Go.
Most people don't need 50 properties to really build well through buying single-family homes. And as we talked about before in other podcasts, that generally most of the landlords in the United States own 5 or less. So for Brian and I, when we started investing way back when, we bought our first property, that single family, and we have stuck to, and I truly believe this, that you have to have like a model, when I did all my research and everything. So my model is I like 3-bedroom, 2 baths, properties. And the reason for that is because they're easy to rent.
Right.
So when we saw the first one, and again, I've talked about, how nervous I was the first one, and so was Brian. Then it was like, we still had that fear when we bought our next one, but what we really learned was about the numbers, And so the next property that we bought, we stayed in the same area because we had a heat map. We stayed in the same area, and another property that met the same criteria that the first one did, we're like,
right.
oh, okay, let's and that probably happened the following year, right? And then we found another property in the same neighborhood, and same thing. So we kept to a certain criteria,
A certain framework,
and that's how we kept building. And then we learned along the way, like the different ways that you can buy more than one property. Now, we eventually got up to like 9-ish properties, but that was because I was in property management and I had access to, landlords who wanted to sell their property and things like that. But we were fine with 5. And actually 9 got to be the point where, that was a full-time job for me, managing the properties and all of that before we ended up turning it over to a property manager, even though I was doing that. But all the knowledge that I learned, by the time we got to that, 6th or 7th property, I was like, okay, we're going to make an offer. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to renovate it. Yeah. So you learn and you just build on. I always say it's like a building block. You start with one and you learn all you can about that one, and then you build it, for your second one, third one, and so on. Yeah, I always look at it as a building block. Like you start with one property and you learn everything, all the numbers, everything, what you did right, what you could have done better, right? Yeah. And then you can use that for the second property and so on. So I think that, when you take the step for the first rental property, that really, like you're saying, you have a framework, you have the confidence, and now you can actually take action. And really the confidence comes from you've studied it and now you're ready
and you practiced it
and you're practicing it, right? And that always gives people, and then it's like anything in life. Yeah. When you practice makes perfect. Yes. Did we make some mistakes along the way? Yes, we did. Those are probably some other podcasts, but we didn't make money and we never lost money. So I think that's the thing, too, that you have to worry about, or not worry, but I think in people's minds, they feel that maybe if they buy a house, what's going to happen? Then I have to get a tenant. And there's some learning that you have to do if you're going to manage it yourself. Yeah. But that's what we did. So we learned how to manage it. And it all comes back to treating it like a business, right? You did your research. Now you get, eyes on the property, with other people, and then you pull the trigger.
Yeah, and I think also, too, like to what you were just saying is one of the biggest things that, and, this comes up all the time in the podcast, all the time when we're talking to other people about real estate investing, like, and me included, I was so nervous about just like the big like the big picture. And the big picture ultimately is real estate investing. But there's so many ways to real estate invest, even with just single family. Like, just take single family. There's still 5 different ways you can invest in single family homes. And we talk about that, but it's all just little pieces. And once you have that one piece, then another piece fits. And then it's like a puzzle and all those things. And really, again, it's just once you buy that single family, you can figure out what you want to do with it too. how many times did you pivot? You know,
Yes.
with a property. Just because you buy a single family home doesn't mean you absolutely have to flip it. You can, you know, have a buy and hold, or you can have a wholesale, or whatever it is. And so again, it's just buying that property, and then the puzzle pieces will fit later.
Yes, I totally agree with that. So like we talked before, you can, you know, study it till the cows come home.
Yep.
But you still have to have that one thing, right? Go back and look up that movie. And, you know, and I think that when people think about it in those terms, like you've said it many times, the framework, and then, and what we also really believe in is the framework needs to fit your lifestyle.
Right.
It's really, we're talking about transitioning, you know, like for you, you were in the corporate world and you wanted to transition, not quit your day job like tomorrow, but transition from the corporate world into buying single family homes. Yeah. And once you do it and you get that confidence, you're just, there's no stopping you.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I think that's a great place to end. Until next week, the next time, we'll see you on the Money Making Mamas Show. Thank you very much, Kelcie. Love you.
Love you.